So we're here to talk through this LITS puzzle by Jeffrey Bardon called Snakes. Each of the regions is a one cell wide path, which is what is traditionally called a snake shape in logic grids. And one thing that means is as we walk tetrominoes along those paths, we can always determine a fairly limited set of shapes that cells will take. There's one easy region in this upper right corner, and actually is always L's. Across any of the shapes 1, 2, 3, 4, there are always L's in that shape. Probably your eyes were drawn to the center at the start, which are always I's everywhere, but it's even useful as you walk along a shape. So this cell could be part of an L. This cell is always part of an L. There are 2 options for it. This cell now has 3 options for it, but all of those are L shapes. This is still L shapes. It finally changes here. We have an I or an L that are options along this path. And as we keep walking across, we're going to get a set where we get over to here. This actually can be part of an IL or S. This is part of an IL or S. This is part of an L or S, L or S, and just L. And so sort of coming through and just seeing sort of a single S option, a set of L options, we can label all these cells and start to get some deductions out of it, like we're never crossing these boundaries because we have L's next to L's. You can't have those 2 tetrominoes touching, and we can't cross these boundaries where we have got I's next to I's. First thing maybe to think about with the shading of the puzzle is that we're going to have sort of 2 options, but these I's have to be exactly opposite each other, one on the upper left, lower right, or the other option, upper right, lower left. But those aren't going to be themselves connected, and it means we're going to need to stay connected through the grid, through these center, the 5th and 6th rows, but either taking at least 2 shaded cells here or 2 shaded cells there. Otherwise, we're not crossing the center boundary where we've got all these X's marked. And so what I want to do is come back then over to this leftmost region and write in the shapes that I see coming down it, and recognize sort of the challenges those then have in getting all the shapes matched. By the time I'm here, I have ILS as options. This is just LS. This is just S. This is just S. And so one thing to note is that if I'm crossing the center region through these cells, I'm putting in an I tetromino shape, which will be touching one of these 2 I tetromino shapes, and that looks very bad. So if you actually are aware of the fact that this has just one option, it effectively means we're not crossing through the space. We would put an I near one of these touching I's. And so the first cells I see that I can shade in this puzzle are the 2 over here. And in shading them, I actually know that I'm putting in an L shape. And so I can eliminate the rest in the grid, but recognize that I'm putting in an L. And that's going to give me some constraints pretty quickly. One thing for sure it means is I'm not connecting through these cells in this top region, which is an all L region. So I have an L coming here that's going to be dodging these. And so I'm going to have to come through these cells and these cells to put valid shapes into the grid. I still also, though, need to get connection through the rest of the grid. And for some of that, recognizing I'm not going to be coming all the way through this shape here, we should see that there are some shadings that are going to cause more trouble than others for how we get the rest connected. And one of the things to probably note is how we get sort of into and out of this side of the grid. So again, I've got to come through these cells, but I have to now eventually connect up to these shaded pieces. And so I have to take red. I can't use blue to get connected. I have to come through this over here, and then also take a cell like this to stay connected. And in doing that, I'm going to get this pattern in the grid. So an L, an S, this all looks fine. I've got to come down here to keep connected to the rest, and that puts in this pattern. Of these cells, this one would always be part of an L shape, so I have to come through this cell for connectivity. And if I started from here or here or here, I'd put another L in. So the only option for the snake that's not an L is this vertical I. Coming down through here, I'm always forced to put in this shape to put in a valid L. I have a part of this region I can never connect to. The rest look okay, but I've got to come through this channel to get connected. It's okay to be an L, but I still have to connect back to this space on the right. So if this were an I, like this, I have to come like that, but I can't connect up to the other I. So this has to come up quickly like this pattern, That eliminates the S option and leaves just that L. And so we finished this challenging LITS puzzle, which really had to do with figuring out how to consider the snake shapes together, and particularly the limited options for them. The planted L only region in the upper right, as well as the forced L to cross over these center regions, were what tiled the whole rest of the grid and solve. And if you get these starting seeds, the rest was much more smooth, but it was a fair amount of work in to get to there, and a really brilliant setup by Jeffrey to get this all placed and working. So hope you learned something through this video, and we'll see you again soon.